Hey folks, Fernando doing a video for the More Survivalists, and this video may seem completely unrelated with survival and preparedness, but it's really not. It actually says a lot about how this toxic left-wing commie woke mentality and making everything about social justice and everything about why you're not woke enough, it pollutes and contaminates all aspects of life. And this is the case also with this video game that's going to be launched tomorrow. If you're not into video games, you probably don't have a clue, but if you are in the least, you probably heard of a game called Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk 2077 is a game that's been in the making for like 6 or 7 years. It's huge. It's a mixture of Grand Theft Auto meets Shadowrun if you're from that generation of video games. So it's a pretty big deal. It's not just a thing about video games. It's about business as well. This is a lot of time. It's millions of dollars invested in getting this done, and it kind of makes it or breaks it depending on how well it is received. And of course, the final say is going to be in the consumer, the guy that buys and likes the game or not. But there's a lot to be said about the reviews that some of these outlets, some of the bigger name video game and media outlets give them. So if you get a poor score, it's likely to hit your sales, especially at first. If you get a better one, people get more excited about it. So it was a huge surprise for everyone involved in this to see that Gamespot, which is one of the more well-known outlets, maybe not anymore one of the most respected ones after this, but Gamespot gave this video game, Cyberpunk, a 7 out of 10. Good. Good is barely like, this is a little bit better than mediocre crap, and it's no way reflecting by any means the kind of game you're getting here. You don't actually have to play a video game to have at least a very broad understanding of what you're dealing with. If it's an A-list type of game, let's say for example, I haven't even played Grand Theft Auto 6. I know it's going to be a 9 or 10 game. It is almost impossible to have something like this go so terribly wrong that you end up with a good or like a mediocre kind of score. But this is what they got from GameSpot, and this is a review specifically made by one of their video game reviewers. And here is where we get into all of this, of how this type of mentality really corrupts and ruins a business, the credibility of a media outlet, like it's in this case GameSpot. It's the laughingstock of the entire community, because the review that this person, a woman called Kelly Plague, it doesn't really matter. It's just interesting to see how when you have one of these people working for you that makes everything about gender politics, and this is a woman that's already had problems in the past. She was actually in IGN, which is another big video game media outlet website, and she had problems there with a co-worker. She ended up accusing him of sexual harassment. Actually, it turns out that she was flirting with him as well, and she actually ended up signing a document. This is interesting because at first, the first thing you see is, women complains about being sexually harassed in her workplace, and everyone, of course, sides with that person. Now, you have to look a little bit more and go beyond, because it may well be the case that you're dealing with one of these woke people that they just lie. And in fact, when you read the entire the full account, she ended up signing a document admitting that she behaved inappropriately herself and flirted with this other guy. And in fact, she signed this document where she was being warned that she would get fired if she continued doing this, if she continued with this inappropriate behavior. So at the very least, it was a mutual flirting thing going on, that she all of a sudden decided to, okay, I'm going to be monetizing on this. I'm going to be calling myself a survivor, a Me Too, whatever bullshit thing. And you know this story, you know how this goes. But just to give you an example, this same woman gave Days Gone another excellent video game 5, mediocre. Why did she give Days Gone, which is a video about a biker that's fighting zombies and that sort of thing? Well, she was offended by the character, the main character, character called Deacon. The relationship that he had with his girlfriend. The girlfriend. Keep in mind, this is a video game. None of this is real. She was offended by the girlfriend asking the main character to ride her like his bike, and him making comments about her butt. This is a video game where you're pretending to be a biker. Not only that, she was offended that there was not enough, or there were no black zombies in the video game. It actually ends up that the disease, or that, like a rotten corpse, kind of ends up looking all the same, like a gray zombie, basically. But no, she had to bring that up. She was offended by the lack of diversity among zombies. If you think this is stupid, you're actually correct. This is stupid. Now, when it comes to Cyberpunk, she gave it a 7 out of 10, good. And keep in mind, this is the same lady that gave Pokemon like a 7.8 or 8 or something like that. Any stupid video game that she finds non-offensive, she gives a disproportionately high rating. But anything that slightly offends her, she just goes after it. Now, why is it that GameSpot goes with this? Do they like having... Well, maybe they do. Maybe they like signaling to the left with this kind of narrative and this kind of review. As the saying goes, go woke, you go broke. I guess that's gonna be the case for GameSpot. Maybe not. Maybe there's enough of that in the community that keeps them afloat, and maybe that's the market they're serving. But it really becomes impossible to take someone seriously when they do this sort of thing. In the case of Cyberpunk, she said, Cyberpunk has standout side quests among strong main characters, though buggy, superficial world and lack of purpose brings it down. So there's this thing going on with a video game which is buggy. Buggy means that it has corrupt code or whatever. That usually gets fixed with a download that you make the day you actually get the video game. So it's usually not something that really makes or breaks a video game, because that gets fixed eventually. What really matters is everything else, not that it has a few bugs, unless it's something impossible to fix, which is really never the case. A video game fails or doesn't fail because of our reasons, not because of a few bugs. There's actually some extremely successful video games that have quite a bit of bugs, and it actually becomes a bit of a laughing matter when it's really not that big a deal. But here when she says superficial world, if there's one thing you cannot say is that Cyberpunk is superficial in any way. It's one of the most in-depth, lore-rich games where you just see this in the images that you see from the trailers. The amount of detail that goes into this is huge, and it makes a lot of sense given that these are the same guys that made Witcher, which is crazy detailed and crazy in-depth and completely opposite of something being superficial. But then you go on reading, and this is the kind of stuff that makes this point about these people just cannot think right. These people just cannot avoid filtering everything, even a video game, with their own ideology. So she says, of course, when it comes to actually playing the video game, she didn't actually finish it when she finished making the review. I didn't want to drag across the city all day. So why are you playing a video game which is a sandbox, basically, where you are supposed to like dragging yourself across that world all day long? That's why you play. That's why they make this kind of video games, for you to get lost in this cyberpunk, made up world. That's kind of the point of playing a video game. I went clothes shopping once, so she actually used that once. There's even an entire crafting and item upgrade menu that I never actually needed to use, given that I was regularly looting better gear. So she didn't actually use any of the things that are in the video game. Why are you even fucking playing the video game if you find playing a video game boring and superficial? This is the kind of review that you get from a 90-year-old grandma that never played a video game and doesn't even like the idea of playing a video game, which is actually fine. But you don't put the 90-year-old grandmother that doesn't like video games reviewing the biggest video game in the last 6 or 7 years. So this is why this becomes so ridiculous. And it's not because she's a 90-year-old woman. It's because she's a woke nutcase that has an axe to grind here. And this is where, I'll end it up here because this is kind of like the most ridiculous statement. So she gets offended by the sexualization of the ads in the video game. Again, what kind of person gets offended by what you see in a video? It's like you get offended by the nudity in a video game that's intended for adults, for plus 18-year-olds, and she, this is the cherry on top. I logged into the commented on how too long, bro, Night City culture is. The result is that there is a fetishization of trans people at every turn. In a game with only one very minor trans character. So just one trans character was not enough for you. You need how many? I mean, how many transsexual characters you need in a video game just to be okay with it? How many of those do you actually need? Isn't it kind of all right enough that you at least have one if that is what you're desperately in need of, because you cannot envision the idea of a video game without transgender characters? There is one, but no, that's not enough. You need several of them floating around and going in depth. Just go watch a transsexual pornographic movie if that's what you're desperately craving for, rather than playing a video game that has nothing to do with your stupid politics. It just makes no sense. But this is the kind of thing that happens. Why is this person even doing video game reviews at all? Why is it that you put this person is obviously conflicted? She called Trump a white supremacist, a racist, nonsense like that. So completely despicable person based on the accusations she made to a colleague, and later ended up signing a document admitting of her own wrongdoing. But beyond that, just a bad person to put in charge of this. But the point here with this video is you're going to be seeing a lot more of this all over. So you're going to be having someone in the education system that is going to be, she just signaled enough wokeness so as to get that job, and she's going to be making all about that. Or a guy that you have running the police in a police precinct in one of the clearly blue cities. They're going to be going with that. They're going to be going with a left-wing nutcase woke creep that just makes everything about, okay, how are we in terms of our trans police officers? Do we have enough transsexual police officers so as to be okay with that, part of the community that desperately needs 5%, 10% of our officers to be transsexuals? Because that's the kind of thing they do. They make everything about their identity politics, about their bullshit. And it's never enough, because it was not enough for this person to have one transsexual character in a video game that's about cyberpunk. No, you have to have we have to decide what percent it is. So I need 5% transsexual characters, 10% of those, gender fluid. It has, of course, to be, the rest has to be 50-50 male and female, but in a way that it also signals to the, what is it, fluid identity bullshit. It never stops. It is impossible to live this way. It is impossible to have a functioning society when everything is polluted by this crap. This is just a tiny little detail. This is just a video game review. That's all it is. But it just shows how this nonsense gets everywhere. You will not see the end of it, especially now. Especially now that you have a guy that's likely to end up in office where he's already battling the same creeps that got him there. So he's already fighting with BLM about, okay, what spots do we get, Joe? Where are we going? What positions do we get? Are we getting the FBI, police here and there? What is that we're getting? They're getting everywhere, right? And the same goes for the Antifa, the same goes for the commies, the same goes for all of these factions that are basically just a big bag of stupid left. All of this is going to be contaminating and spreading. And this is going to be affecting your economy, your businesses. It's going to be affecting your education. It's going to be affecting national security. It's going to be affecting everything because they are not good at their job. They are just of the right politics. They're just of the right ideology, and that's all it's needed for them to reach these positions. So in a woke media outlet like GameSpot, they're gonna be okay with that. Yeah, she's a complete, stupid person and incapable of doing a video game review without going into all of this nonsense. Okay, that's okay. We're gonna be giving Cyberpunk a 7 because that's gonna be making us look cool, and Days Gone was mediocre. Yeah, the only thing you're achieving with this is no one is gonna be taking you seriously, of course, but again, bigger picture, this is the kind of thing you're going to be looking at in everything. Most of all, I'm concerned in terms of education, which is one of the favorite targets of the left. They love going after it. They know that it's a great investment for them. It's always been that way. They've been very successful with universities, and they're going to be, no doubt, going very strongly at some of the younger ages as well. They're going to be seeing this in kindergarten. They're going to be indoctrinated with, you'll have little Kelly Plague clones all over the place. How many trans do I have here? That's not enough. You're not going enough in depth into the trans character. That kind of bullshit that just only a brain-dead zombie could actually, come up with. But that's what you're looking at, folks. That's the way it is, and that's what you have to prepare for. Folks, see you on our next video. Have an awesome day.